election. I'm back with pollster Lee Carter. I'm back with Republican strategist Ford O'Connell and Democratic strategist John Rowley. You know, in some ways, they're both talking, Ford, about the same stuff, right? I mean, they want to get the economy going again. They want to create more jobs again. I guess there is, however, a fundamental difference in their approach to it. One is through more regulation, higher taxes on individuals and corporations so as to become more of a nanny state and pass all that through and take care of people. And the other is through less regulation, lower taxes, with the theory being let's unleash economic prosperity. I mean, same stuff, just very, very different approaches.
Well, they do have very different approaches, but understand what Hillary Clinton's approach is right now. She thinks she's ahead, and she basically is trying to knead the ball, but what she's worried about in particular from the excerpt we listened to is millennials. She's basically telling Donald Trump and the world, if I can turn out my base, particularly among millennials and minority voters and single women, I'm going to win this election. That's why she's hammering those same issues over and over. And with respect to the economy, yes, millennials are hacked off about the fact that they don't have jobs, but the way she's talking about the economy seems to resonate more with them than the way Donald Trump does.
You think that it resonates more with millennials? Yes, I think you're right. I think that, you know, no offense against millennials, but a lot of them would kind of like a handout. And, you know, maybe it's in part because they've been, John, you're shaking your head no, but they've had a hard go of it, right? So they don't, in some ways, really know what it is to work. And I'd also argue that millennials have been part of a generation where parents have coddled them, where schools have coddled them, and so they don't know what it's like to actually get out and have to do some hard labor. You know, they didn't have the paper route when they were 12. Heck, you know, when they were 12, everything was already online. Maybe paper routes didn't exist in the neighborhood. So, John, they've had a very different experience, and thus they have different economic expectations, you got to admit.
No, absolutely, and that's always been the case, but I think there's a difference between her message resonating with them and millennials rejecting someone who attacks sexual assault victims. And so, I mean, you know, talking about Hillary, whether she's working hard or not in the campaign, I mean, there's an old business axiom that I think her campaign's following. If your adversary is busy hacking their own legs off, don't get in the way. And so
but
I'm
he's
glad.
Not doing that lately. I mean, that's the challenge for her, as Lee just pointed out.
Well,
he has gotten back on message. He's reacting less and making news more, which is the position you want to be in right before the election.
I'm glad he found his inside speaking voice. If he would have found that 6 to 7 months ago, he might have a better shot. But I think, I mean,
I'm sorry, what does that mean?
Well, I mean, he's talking calmer and as opposed to just being vitriolic and on the attack, but it's not going to change the fact we're talking about.
That said, I mean, just so long as you're going to bring up speaking voice, my advice to Hillary Clinton is do not forget the power of a microphone. It would help her vocal cords. As a former singer, sometimes I listen to her and I'm very concerned for her actual voice because I think it's taken its toll on her. You need to just bring it down a little bit and remember the power of the microphone. Anyway, Lee, you know, I think this is an important issue to address. Just exactly who do the economic issues sort of respond with more? I mean, is it sort of your middle class, middle age, older, disenfranchised voter that's going for Donald Trump, whereas, you know, your millennial is going to say, I don't really care about that job in the factory, so I'm going to vote for Hillary Clinton?
Yeah, I mean, I think that what we're seeing is that there is this crush on the middle class where people are really struggling and suffering in areas outside of cities where they were reliant on plants and manufacturing to flourish, and that's just not there anymore. And so this message is really resonating with them. On the other side, millennials, they're looking, you know, they're saddled with student debt, and it is a big issue for them. And so they're looking at it and saying, what's in it for me? When they hear Hillary Clinton talking about this, they're saying that is something that's in it for me. And it makes sense. You can see everything that you look at is through the lens that you look at your world, and their world is just limited to that.
I don't see them being as motivated as she needs them to be right now, Ford. I mean, if she really wants to get a big turnout, how do you get these young kids, and some of them not so young, but how do you really get them excited? Is it actually freebies that's going to do the trick here?
Well, I think it's Bernie Sanders that gets him excited. Let's look back at this. He basically crushed her. Well, it is the authenticity, but he was giving away everything, including free puppies, Trish. Let's be honest here. It's not very often that you basically say, gee, a 73-year-old really gets me going. Yeah. But obviously Bernie Sanders did it, and he was extremely authentic. So, but I want to go back to one point that John made. He said, gee, Donald Trump just found his stride with 2 weeks to go. Well, actually, he found his stride right before the first debate, and then the Access Hollywood tape came out. What happened was Donald Trump was even with Hillary Clinton going into that first debate. The Access Hollywood tape came out. Now the WikiLeaks has brought this race back to where we were exactly 4 weeks ago, and the question's all going to come down to turnout. The one thing I will say that does scare the Hillary Clinton cloud is that the millennials, you just don't know whether or not they're going to turn out, and that is their biggest phobia.
All right. Well, and the enthusiasm issue is a big one.
Enthusiasm, yes, an enthusiasm gap. So good to see all of you. We have much more to cover. I'll see you back here with the Market Up 2 after this.